Welcome to Sci-Fi Sounds, where imagination meets sound. Dive into a world of audio short stories where each tale transports you to distant galaxies, unknown dimensions, and alternate realities. From pulse-pounding sci-fi adventures to thought-provoking futuristic mysteries, we craft worlds with nothing but the power of sound and storytelling. Tune in, close your eyes, and let your mind wander. Your journey into the unknown begins here with Sci-Fi Sounds. Shrieked as it peeled outward from the crushed drop pod. Steam hissed into the blood-colored sky. Then a fist punched through. Thick, gloved, streaked with hydraulic fluid, and what might have been blood, the hand gripped the edge. A shoulder followed, armored and dented, then the wide, shaven skull of Sergeant Ox Vargan, face blank, eyes narrow. He crawled out of the pod like something reborn and pissed about it. His boots sank into the sludge of Valkus, a viscous mix of ash, rust-colored mud, and powdered bone. The air shimmered with static and tasted like copper rot. A blackened chunk of hull hissed nearby, cooling in a pool of fuel. Vargan's jaw clenched. He stepped over a twisted seat harness with an arm still strapped in. No time to mourn. Not here. Grieve, he barked, voice like broken stone. A muffled curse came from under a fractured starboard wing that had impaled itself in the muck. Yeah, I hear you, you slab of concrete, came the reply. Give me 2 seconds and maybe half a spine. Vargan moved toward the sound. He grabbed a piece of support strut and heaved it off the wing's edge. Beneath, Corporal Grieve lay half buried in synth foam, his leg twisted but attached. He lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. I broke every oath I made to stay out of space, Grieve muttered. And what'd it get me? A face full of fucking moon. Vargan knelt, pulled him out with one arm, and dropped him into the sludge. You're walking, Vargan said. Not a question. I'm limping aggressively, Grieve corrected, spitting out a piece of tooth. A flicker of light swept across the crater, scanner beam. Both men dropped low, weapons half raised. Vargan's shoulder cannon was jammed. He grabbed a salvaged pulse rifle from a nearby corpse, shook it twice, and it spat coolant before whirring online. Then they heard boots in the mud. Don't shoot. I'm prettier than you, and you'll regret it. From the smoke-limp specialist Elsmero, cybernetic eye glowing faint green, a shard of glass embedded in her thigh. Her cloak was torn, her sniper rifle dragged behind her like an injured pet. She looked at the two of them, at the bodies, at the landscape. Shit, she said. We really made it. Vargan stood. He nodded once. Check for others, he ordered. Grieve, gear sweep, prioritize stems and chargers. Any chance we're calling this one off? Grieve muttered, already limping toward a flaming supply crate. Elle scanned the horizon. Her cyber eye pinged something. Brief, flickering. Movement. She frowned. Something out there, she said. 2 clicks. Might be tech debris. Might be watchers. Doesn't matter yet, Vargan said. He turned toward the smoking remains of the forward troop cabin. We find the officer. Then we move. A low thunder rolled across the sky. Not thunder. The storm was coming. And somewhere inside the wreckage, Lieutenant Vrex hadn't moved in 10 minutes. The cabin door was fused shut, buckled inward by impact, scorched black along the seams. Vargan didn't knock. He set his shoulder against the alloy and drove forward with a single brutal heave. The door snapped loose, clattering into the wrecked interior. Lieutenant Vrex sat inside, crushed beneath the collapsed comms column, one leg pinned, holding a stylus like a scalpel, making notes on a cracked field board. His helmet was off. His face, as always, was unreadable. Issue status, he asked, voice calm and hollow. You're alive, Vargan replied. Vrex blinked once. Minor disappointment. Grieve leaned in from behind, saw the bent comm array jammed against Vrex's thigh and winced. That's going to be a hell of a limp. I do not intend to walk, Vrex replied. This position is temporary. Gather what you can. We mobilize in 30. That's optimistic, Grieve said. You're half a meat pancake. Then roll me. Vargan moved to the rear panel and began kicking through the debris. A med kit, half a box of AP rounds, 1 stim injector. He pocketed it all. Else, he called out, on the ridge, scanning. Her voice came through his comms, static scraped. Got movement in the fog, ghost flickers, possible scouts, could be eyes on us already. Range? Vrex asked. Too far to tag. They're drifting. Floating. She paused. I don't like the way they move. Vargan glanced down at Vrex. The lieutenant met his gaze. Dispersal formation. 2-man recon team spread radial. Leave the dead. Grieve muttered something under his breath and slammed a field patch onto his thigh. Storm hits in 20, Els added. That fog's already tasting metal. As if to punctuate, the wind shifted. It wasn't loud, but it carried grit, fine grains of glass or ash. The air prickled on their skin. Vargan hoisted Lieutenant onto his back without asking permission. You'll slow us, he said. I'm aware, Vrex replied. You'll carry me anyway. They moved through the wreckage like looters at their own funeral. They took weapons from the bodies they knew, pocketed tags, left helmets on. There were no prayers. Els regrouped with them at the edge of the drop zone, staring into the roiling red fog. Her voice was low. They're out there. Vargan didn't ask what. He just said, then we go meet them. And they walked into the storm. The fog swallowed sound. Every bootfall was muffled. Every breath hung heavy. What little wind there was seemed to come from beneath them, up from the ground. It carried a strange warmth, wet and fungal, like a crawl space filled with rot. Somewhere in the distance, something hissed and clicked in a rhythm far too fast for any natural thing. Grieve muttered, I've seen cleaner atmospheres inside corpses. No comms bounce, Els said. No satellite ping. This place is a dead cell. We're the only thing alive in it, Grieve replied, then paused. Maybe. They moved slowly in triangle formation. Vargan took point with Vrex still slung over one shoulder. The lieutenant was silent, chewing a field ration like it offended him personally. Els scanned the shifting haze ahead. Her rifle's scope glowed faint green, occasional spikes, thermal anomalies, but nothing she could tag. Then they found it. A half-melted escape pod, embedded at an angle in a shallow crater, its shell warped like chewed foil. The hatch had been torn off, not blown out by impact, but peeled, as if by fingers or claws. The interior was black. Vargan approached first, weapon raised. Inside he found the remains of 6 soldiers, fused to the walls by what looked like cooled slag, helmets half melted into skulls. One figure had clearly tried to claw their way through the ceiling. His gloves were embedded in the plating. Grieve stepped up, exhaled slowly. They didn't crash. They landed. Vrex adjusted his weight. And something was waiting. Els scanned the hull. No signs of energy residue, she said. Whatever hit them wasn't tech. It was animal, but planned. Before they could speak again, a sharp burst of light flared up on the far horizon. Green, unnatural, vertical. Not fire, not lightning, a flare. The squad froze. That's either a call for help, Grieve said, or a baited hook. Vargan looked through the fog in silence. Then he checked his rifle, pulled the bolt with a deliberate clack, and started walking toward the light. The others followed. Behind them, something in the crater blinked once, then shut its many eyes. The storm crested. The flare's light pulsed slow and steady, an unnatural beat against the gloom, like a heartbeat with no body. The squad pushed through a forest of twisted mineral pillars that hummed in response to their movement. Sound here was strange. Each footfall echoed unevenly, like the ground didn't quite agree with the laws of physics. Els walked wide of the group, rifle up, cybernetic eye pulsing as it filtered static from phantom heat signatures. Nothing clean. Everything distorted. Even her own squad flickered in her optics, as if reality itself was sweating. Signal's unstable, she muttered into her comms. Could be a flare, could be a dying beacon, could be a Rathian joke. They don't joke, Vrex said. That's what makes it funny, Grieve replied, dragging his bad leg through the mud like a rusted sled. They crested a ridge, a low rise of broken glass and soft stone, and saw the source of the light below. A beacon stake, definitely human, crackling faint green from a half-buried position. No bodies, no gear, no heat signs, just the light. Vargan raised a fist, halting the group. He tilted his head. Something had changed. The fog behind them had stopped moving. He turned slowly. Shapes hovered in the mist. 3 of them. No legs, no wings. They floated on silence. Mirror black shells. Long, thin appendages, each ending in instruments that didn't look like weapons, but weren't friendly either. Contact, he said. One of the shapes twitched. The appendage snapped forward. The first soldier died instantly. His name was Rigo, and his helmet burst like fruit under pressure. He never made a sound. Grieve screamed, half in rage, half in reflex, and fired blind. The slug hit nothing but fog. Els dropped to a knee and sent a round through one of the shapes. Its top half snapped backward in a flash of cerulean gel. It floated a moment longer, twitching, then dropped like a puppet with cut strings. The other two scattered. "Back!" Vargan shouted. "To the ridge!" They ran, not in panic, but with grim urgency. Grieve fired wide arcs to push the drones back, while Els flanked left to cover their retreat. The fog shifted again, deeper now, coiling around their legs like sentient gas. A second drone swept low, angling toward Vrex. Vargan didn't hesitate. He turned, grabbed a nearby piece of a dropship crate, jagged, metal and heavy, and hurled it like a hammer. It smashed into the drone mid-glide, knocking it off course and down into the mineral thickets with a wet crunch. Vrex didn't flinch. Tactical efficiency adequate. "Shut up and crawl," Grieve grunted, dragging the officer backward with one arm while aiming with the other. They reached the ridge. Els tossed a proximity mine over her shoulder and triggered it on manual. The blast was sharp and white, lighting the fog like a camera flash. In its wake, silence fell. The last drone had vanished. They hunkered behind the ridge, chest plates heaving. Vargan dropped to a knee, eyes fixed on the fog line, weapons steady. Grieve slumped beside him, blood trickling from his nose. Els sat with her back against a stone and stared down at her hands. "Rigo's gone," she said. Quiet. Flat. Vrex didn't look at her. He tapped his board and marked a unit loss. "Logged." Els blinked. "Logged? That's what you say?" Vrex looked at her. "What would you prefer? Something that sounds less like accounting. He died doing his assigned function. That is all any of us will do. The enemy is assessing us now, mapping responses. Next contact will be worse." "Yeah," Grieve muttered, "but we'll be worse too." Vargan stood, adjusting his rifle sling. His voice was low, graveled. "No evac, no backup. That beacon was bait, and we bit." Els leaned her head back and laughed once, sharp and dry. "Not the first trap we've sprung on ourselves." Grieve pulled out a flask, shook it, empty. Vrex updated the squad map. "We hold here until nightfall, if such a thing exists on this cursed rock. Then we move east. There's a cliff formation. Elevation will give us a field advantage." "Anything else?" Vargan asked. Vrex looked toward the fog again. "Yes. Kill every drone you see. Leave nothing for them to analyze." A silence settled over the squad, heavy, bitter, tinged with blood. Then Vargan said it, slow and certain. "First blood's on us now." The cave entrance wasn't much, just a ragged slit in the side of a basalt rise. But it was shelter. Barely. The ceiling dripped with condensation that smelled like vinegar and burned in the lungs. Inside, the floor was slick with moss or some alien analog of it, and the walls pulsed faintly where bioluminescent spores had nested. Vargan stepped in first, scanning corners. He swept a knife through the air to scatter the mist-clinging spores before signaling the all-clear. Els entered behind him, checking her rifle for hairline fractures. The lens casing had cracked during the retreat. She muttered to herself, pulled out a strip of field tape, and patched it with the precision of someone who'd done this 100 times before. Grieve limped in last, dropping to a seated position with a groan and laying out his medkit like a gambler spreading cards. "I have 6 units of clotter, 1 expired stem, and something I'm pretty sure is superglue. Who wants to play guess which one's fatal?" "Save the stem," Vargan said. "Use the glue. We're not building bodies, just keeping them upright." Vrex didn't need help climbing in. Despite his ruined leg, he used a scavenged pole and sheer will to drag himself to a ledge and begin typing into his field board. There was blood soaking into his boot. He ignored it. For a few minutes, no one spoke. The wind outside howled low, carrying that glass-edged tone unique to Valkus, like metal being scraped, stretched. Then Vrex spoke, not looking up. "The mission has changed." Vargan didn't respond. He just listened, slowly reloading the pulse rifle he'd pulled off a dead man. "No evac channel has been received. The fleet was shattered. There will be no extraction, no reinforcements." "Called it," Grieve muttered. "The beacon was not from another unit. It was a Rathian mimic, designed to study response patterns. We gave them plenty. They'll adjust now." Vargan looked up. "Orders?" Vrex met his gaze at last. "Effective immediately, this operation is designated Kill Priority Alpha. Objective, inflict maximum damage on enemy infrastructure, disrupt communication nodes, and destroy any units encountered. Secondary objective, recover intelligence on Rathian surface tactics. Final directive, do not expect survival." Grieve gave a half laugh that died halfway out. "So, we're not just dead, we're homework." Els cracked her knuckles and slid a fresh cell into her rifle. "Well, I always wanted to leave behind a legacy." Vargan didn't blink. How many still breathing? 9, Grieve said, including us. Then we dig in. Vargan said, set traps, rest 1 hour, then we move. He walked to the cave mouth and looked out into the fog-choked plains. The storm had receded slightly, leaving the landscape glistening like a wound. No more running, he said, quiet but certain. Els joined him, shouldering her rifle. What now? Vargan grinned, faint and ugly. Now we remind them. Remind who? He looked into the storm. That the ground is still ours. They spent the first hour carving the cave into a defensible shell. It wasn't strategy. It was instinct. Vargan picked the deepest channel in the stone and started stacking scrap, wiring what charges they had left to cover the front approach. Grieve built a triage nest from shredded armor panels and melted foam. Els worked alone, further out, setting tripwires with surgical precision and muttering under her breath. By the time the ridge fog cleared in more than 30 feet, they had a base. A terrible one. But theirs. The soil beyond the cave was soft, too soft. It swallowed boots past the ankle, sucked at soles with a greedy, wet slap. Red-black mud layered over patches of faintly glowing lichen, which dimmed as they passed and sometimes emitted low, insectoid clicks. Els crouched on the high edge of the ridge with her rifle balanced on a crumpled med case, watching the horizon. I've got motion again, she said. Low, no heat, might be environmental. Or it's them learning, Grieve said, like bacteria. Bacteria don't fly drones. They do if you scare them enough. Vrex emerged from the back chamber with a limp made worse by a fresh splint. He carried a battered transmitter unit cradled like an infant. The antennae were sheared off, the power cell was exposed, and the screen was barely readable, but it was functional. Something's talking out there, he said. Els glanced down through her scope. Don't say it's another beacon. No, not bait. It's structured transmission, patterned, 32-second intervals. Grieve glanced up. Ours? Partially. Code stack is human, but there's encryption over it, Rathian overlay. Mixed signal? Vargan asked. More likely stolen hardware, or a prisoner forced to relay through their tech. Source is coming from the southeast, swamp belt. Els leaned forward. Could be a trap. Vrex nodded. Or a survivor. Grieve lit another cigarette, drew in deep, and exhaled through his teeth. We gonna do this? March into a swamp for a maybe? We're kill priority alpha, Vargan said flatly. We don't sit still. We move, we hit, we bleed 'em dry. He looked at the mud underfoot, then at the jagged horizon beyond. Pack light. We're burning daylight, if there's any such thing here. Els checked her rifle, adjusted her lens, and said, one thing. Everyone turned. That transmission, it's not just a message. It's layered with something else. Something subliminal. Meaning? Els stared down at the ridge, unblinking. It's got a voice in it. They moved out an hour later. The landscape twisted as they descended. The ground got wetter, the air heavier. Spore pods grew in clusters along the slope, popping with faint hisses when stepped on. At one point, they passed a long-dead Rathian scout impaled on his own surveillance rod, rigged that way intentionally. No one claimed it. But Els smiled. Halfway through the descent, a soft clicking started in the comms. Grieve froze. We getting signal bleed? No, Vrex said. That's something trying to connect. The sound grew louder, building from inside the helmets, not from outside. A low, wet whisper, distorted by static. Words half-formed, syllables stretched. Then a voice broke through, female, weak, distorted. Elp God, he's watching from inside, from NC. Then silence. No one spoke for a full minute. Was that? Grieve began. No confirmation, Vrex said too fast. Could be sample distortion, could be mimicry. We keep moving, Vargan said. We find the source, or we kill whatever's talking. An hour later, they reached the first visible edge of the swamp. Black trees with translucent bark stretched upward like veins, and pools of viscous fluid rippled in concentric circles as if breathing. There, rising above it all, was the signal source. A relay tower, old human design, jacked full of alien gear. It blinked, slow and green, and standing in front of it, unmoving, was a human figure in full combat armor, helmet on, rifle slung, silent. The squad stopped, weapons up, eyes locked. Vargan narrowed his gaze. Who the hell is that? The figure didn't move. Not when Vargan shouted. Not when Grieve circled wide with a hand on his shotgun. Not even when Els trained her rifle scope on the visor plate. It was human armor. That much was clear. Standard Earth Forces combat rig 27th issue, no less. but covered in a sheen of organic slime and traced with spidering veins of some crystalline growth. The figure stood before the tower as if rooted. Could be dead, like Grieve muttered. Dead things don't stand, Vargan replied. Could be Rathian controlled. You saw that Twitch feed last cycle. Yeah, I also saw it go for the neck. Vrex limped forward just enough to be heard. We need intel. We take the tower. We take him alive if he's still usable. Els was already moving. She approached from the side, slow and quiet, rifle ready, cybernetic eye tracking every twitch. At 5 meters, she paused. The figure hadn't moved. Then it spoke, not with the voice of a man, not a woman either. It was the flare voice, the signal voice, echoed and warped as if speaking through wet cloth and teeth. We are what remains. Els froze. Vargan didn't. He lunged. In a burst of speed unnatural for his size, he closed the distance and slammed the figure to the ground. The armor hit the mud with a wet slap, and for the first time it moved, jerking violently, spasming. Not fighting, convulsing. Vargan ripped off the helmet. Inside was a man, barely. His face was blistered, eyes wide and entirely black, mouth open as if screaming, but silent. He gurgled, then vomited up a stream of pink fluid that hissed on contact with the ground. His lips moved. She's in the light, he whispered. Then his face split from chin to ear, not with a wound but with a sickening organic unzipping, revealing a pulsing membrane of alien tissue beneath. Vargan put 2 rounds in his chest and stepped back. The body twitched, then went limp. Silence. Grieve swallowed hard. What the hell was that? Human shell, Vrex said, stepping up. Outer layer functional. Inner reprogrammed. They're puppeting us now? Els asked. Just one way of using the dead. Vargan said nothing. He turned to the tower. Alien tech had been fused into transmission dish, coiled around its support beams like veins. The signal pulsed louder here, no longer subtle. It throbbed inside their helmets, a low drone just beneath thought. Els pulled a hardwire node from her belt and stabbed it into the relay's port. Her eyes glazed for a moment. I'm in. She worked fast, fingers flickering across the pad. It's dirty code, our comms framework, but twisted. They're using emotional prompts, fear, longing, grief, embedding them in pulse signals. To control? Grieve asked. No, to invite. They're trying to make us want it. She spat into the mud. Fuckers. Vargan knelt next to the corpse. The skin had stopped twitching, but the face was still there, frozen in something that looked disturbingly close to peace. He stood. We move. Now. No salvage? Vrex asked. Burn it. Els pulled 2 canisters from her satchel, plasma gel, low yield. She tossed them into the relay's guts and watched as the flame took root, spreading upward in jagged streaks of green fire. Behind them, the swamp began to shift. Something was moving, slowly, all around. The trees quivered. The air grew thick. They started marching, skirting the pools, but the ground beneath them grew less solid, less earth and more membrane. The fog began to rise again, but this time it clung differently, like breath. They saw it first in the water. Eyes. Not floating, not reflective, embedded. Grieve stumbled back. The swamp is alive. A shape burst from the fluid, long, eel-like, with limbs that weren't quite limbs and a mouth that opened 4 ways. It landed on Grieve's shoulder, bit into his armor, and started boring inward. Els shot it twice. It shrieked as it died. More emerged. The squad formed a tight circle, firing in precise bursts. One of the creatures latched onto a rookie trooper, Bryn. He screamed as it slipped under his armor, disappearing into his back. Vargan ran to him, shoved him down, and slammed his boot into the center of the armor. Then he pulled his knife and drove it through the spine plate. The screaming stopped. Vrex nodded. Smart. They didn't stop to bury him. When the swarm eased, they ran. Hours passed in chaos, retreating through sinking terrain, firing behind them, burning their last charges to fry the waterline. One by one, the creatures stopped chasing. The fog thinned. They emerged on a ridge at last, panting, dripping, half covered in acid-washed mud. Grieve collapsed to a knee, laughing bitterly. That was new. Elle sat beside him. Her hands were shaking. They used him to talk to us, she said. Like a phone. No, Vargan said. Like a mirror. Vrex tapped a command into his board. Whatever that was, it wasn't a unit. It was infrastructure, swamp tech, bio-integrated relay mesh. Meaning? They didn't just kill this place. They built it. Vargan stared back at the horizon, at the forest that had swallowed the tower. We're not just fighting them. He looked down at the mud. We're walking on them. They found the pod buried beneath a dune of ash-blown glass, half melted into the landscape like a wound trying to scar over. Its beacon was off, dead long ago, but the hull still pulsed with a faint heat signature, like a corpse that hadn't finished cooling. Elle spotted it first. Her eye twitched as they moved across the ridge, and she halted mid-step. "There," she said. "Right shoulder, 5 degrees down. That isn't rock." They approached slowly. Grieve ran a metal wand over the surface, got a chirp back. Definitely human alloy, Earth Force's Black Ops grade. Vrex's posture shifted the moment he confirmed it. Not fear, alertness. "Any signal leakage?" Vargan asked. "No," Elle said. "Dark for weeks." "Still sealed?" Vrex added, crouching beside it now. "Looks like it. If it's open, it didn't stay that way." Grieve pried at the main hatch with a field crowbar, muttering obscenities. They weld these things like they expect the sun to eat 'em. With a grinding pop, the hatch split along its seams and swung outward. The smell hit them first. Burnt rubber, rot, ozone, and a metallic tang like coins left in blood. Inside, 3 blackened corpses in what had once been stealth armor. They were folded around a data vault the size of a coffin. A single red light blinked steadily on its surface. Elle stepped in without hesitation. She slotted her interface jack into the port and downloaded the core files to a local drive. Encrypted, but human keys. Vrex extended a palm. "Give me the drive." Els didn't move. "You want it decrypted or buried?" She handed it over, slow. Vrex plugged it into his command slate. A cold blue projection flared up, displaying timestamps, file headers, and a string of classified tags marked in urgent red. Then the footage began. At first, satellite scans of a rural colony site on another moon, agricultural layout, small townships, 0 weapon signatures. Then came thermal footage, mass evacuations, civilians loading into transports, and then the Rathians. Not troops, not soldiers, drones, hundreds, descending in formation like a plague. They didn't fire weapons, they didn't speak. They landed and the screaming started. Elle stared as a Rathian handler deployed a sonic field and children inside a shuttle began convulsing, bleeding from eyes and ears. A woman was torn apart not by explosives, but resonance, sound tuned to shred organic matter. A new file autoplayed, a helmet cam, a human squad. Earth Force's Black Ops, watching from a ridge too far to engage, not authorized to act. One of the voices whispered, "We're just here to record." And so they did, for 40 minutes. Vargan didn't move as the footage played. Neither did Grieve. The last clip showed the same squad back on Valkus, uploading the footage to a relay unit. A voice said, "They'll never let this out. But if they bury us here, make sure they find it." Then static. Then silence. Grieve lit a cigarette with shaking hands and whispered, "So we knew. We knew what they did." "We always knew," Vrex said quietly. "No," Elle snapped. "We guessed. This proves it. This makes it real." She turned to Vargan. "We're not just kill priority. We're cleanup. Bury the evidence. Quietly." Vargan didn't look at her. He stared at the data slate, then stepped inside the pod. He took one of the dead Black Ops soldiers by the collar and sat him upright. Then he placed the drive in the corpse's lap. "I want it found," he said. "How?" Grieve asked. "We leave this pod intact. We burn the rest. Anyone following the trail finds the truth or finds ash. Either way, they know we were here." Else hesitated. "And us? We move. To where?" Vargan stepped out into the dusk. The ash in the wind had turned darker, heavier. He looked toward the horizon. "They built a base nearby. I saw it on the intel before we dropped. Massive refinery, local operation node." Grieve gave a low whistle. "That'll be hell." "Good." Vrex closed the pod hatch. "What's the plan?" Vargan slung his rifle. "We don't die in caves or in swamps. We die on their doorstep, screaming." The entrance to the hive was alive. It pulsed faintly with light beneath its shell, translucent plates of curved organic alloy arranged like insect wings frozen mid-flutter. Els reached for it, and the surface rippled under her fingers, registering the touch with a low chime that resonated in her teeth. They didn't breach it. It simply opened. The squad stepped inside, and the hive swallowed them whole. It wasn't a building. It wasn't a bunker. It wasn't anything human logic had names for. The internal geometry shifted when not directly observed. Corridors split and rejoined behind them. Light didn't cast shadows, and distances lied. 5 steps became 20. Corners bent the wrong way. At some point, they realized the walls were breathing. "Why build it like this?" Grieve whispered, hand on the wall, breath shallow. To confuse, Vrex said, to repulse. Like a nest, Els added, eye flickering. Predators don't need camouflage, they need disorientation. Vargan said nothing. He walked steadily, carving a path with his presence alone. At one point, the corridor thinned around him, closing like a throat. He didn't flinch. He kept walking. It opened again. They reached a central chamber, circular, domed, bathed in soft lavender light. Dozens of stalks rose from the floor, each ending in a bulb that blinked with alien glyphs. At the center of the room, floating above a platform of biostructured tendrils, was the core, a glassy sphere encasing a column of data nodes, each one pulsing in sequence. Vrex stepped forward and plugged in a data tap. Instantly, his slate went haywire. Symbols scrolled too fast to parse. Els caught some of it on her HUD. Coordinates, orbital telemetry, voice imprints. This is it, she said. Command routing, sensor network for the whole quadrant. Can we jam it? Grieve asked. No, Vrex said, too quickly. If we touch the broadcast line, they'll know we were here. So what do? We listen. They watched in silence as the feed scrolled, battle plans, troop allocations, and then something stranger. Hold on, Els muttered. This isn't all military. Some of this is observational. Of what? Vargan asked. Us. The feed changed. Human faces appeared. Some from their own squad, some from other units. Recordings, helmet footage, biosigns, stress patterns, and then one screen opened showing Earth. Not satellite views, interior shots. Hospitals, schools, bedrooms. Els froze. This isn't recon, she said. It's behavioral mapping. Grieve squinted at a stream of coded signals. What the hell is this? A social mirror, Vrex said, voice cold. They're not just fighting our bodies, they're figuring out where to push. Figuring to win? Els asked. Vargan shook his head. No, to remake. Suddenly the walls around them rippled. The light shifted to red. The hive noticed them. A low tone started. Like a siren played backward. Vrex yanked the data tap free. We triggered something. No, Els said. It triggered us. The passage they'd entered from sealed behind a layer of bone-like plating. A new exit spiraled open across the chamber. They ran. The hive didn't attack, not directly. It moved around them. Corridors extended or shortened as they ran. Symbols flashed across the walls, repeating phrases in distorted human language. Be still, be better, we fix, we replace, we replace, we replace. Els screamed and fired into a wall. The round vanished in the surface without a trace. Not a structure, she gasped. Not a base. Grieve's voice cracked. What is it? It's a fucking nursery. They hit the outer rim in 5 minutes, an eternity inside the twisting spaces. The final door had no panel, no code. It opened when Vargan punched it hard enough to crack bone in his knuckles. They spilled into the light. Real light. Sky above. Burnt red haze. Wind that stank like metal and ozone. Behind them, the hive sealed itself like it had never been there. No alarms, no chase, just the memory. Grieve collapsed on a rock, panting. Okay, that's the worst place I've ever been. And I once got surgery in a vending machine. Els sat beside him, hands shaking. They're not just killing us, they're growing replacements. Vargan didn't speak for a long time. He stared back at the sealed wall of the hive. Then quietly he said, We hit the refinery next. Vrex nodded, already logging the data. We don't just kill their soldiers. No, Vargan said, we kill their future. The assault was dirty and fast. The alien supply node looked like a collapsed ribcage from a distance, thick black supports rising from the soil like bones, wrapped in sinew-like fiber cables that pulsed with an ugly green glow. Heat shimmered above it. Steam hissed from the lower vents. It wasn't a base, it was a wound in the planet. The 27th didn't hesitate. Vargan led the charge, flanked by Els and a pair of rookies, Rigo's replacements, silent and wide-eyed. Grieve had wired 2 satchel bombs into delivery drones and sent them scuttling down the left flank. Vrex stayed back, monitoring the whole field through a field hub, watching for flanking countermeasures. They moved through broken terrain, razor rock ridges and fields of scorched moss that sizzled under their boots. No sky cover, no distractions. This was it. As they neared the outer perimeter, shapes began to rise from the black soil, thin, insectile. Not drones, something worse. Rathian groundbinders, all limbs and mandibles and eyes that tracked through stone. They didn't charge, they just stood. Waiting. Creepy bastards, Grieve muttered. Are they praying? No, Vrex said. They're watching. Then we give them something to record. Vargan barked a command and opened fire. The field erupted. Energy rounds tore through the first wave of binders, ripping limbs and snapping spine plates. Els moved like lightning, dropping targets one after another. Her rifle sang, a staccato rhythm of pain. The rookie screamed and fired wildly. One was torn down instantly, arms split from his body in a spray of red. The second kept going. Vargan crashed into the first wall of the node, literally. He slammed his body through the outer fiber web, tearing it apart with a combat blade in sheer fury. Inside, the supply chambers boiled with heat. Organic tubes pumped some kind of fluid into pods mounted on the walls. Inside the pods were people, human shapes suspended in gel, alive, not prisoners. Storage. Shit, Elle said as she caught up, eyes wide. They're keeping us like inventory. No, Vargan growled, like ingredients. He planted his charge and set the timer to 30 seconds. Out, he shouted. They tore through the interior, back through the shredded walls. Grieve met them at the exit, bleeding from the side, carrying the second rookie, dead. Leave him, Vargan snapped. Grieve didn't hesitate. They cleared the ridge just as the charges blew. The entire node collapsed inward, folding like a dying creature. A shockwave of heat and liquid flesh sprayed out in a wide arc. The blast was less explosive and more digestive, a ruptured organ. The stench hit them a second later. Everyone gagged. Els wiped her mouth. That wasn't a supply depot, she said. That was a butcher shop. Vrex tapped his slate. Uploading footage, full exposure. To who? Grieve asked. Whoever survives long enough to care. They walked away from the wreckage in silence, boots cracking the glass underfoot. No celebration, no victory, only movement. Vargan didn't look back. They found him in a pit. It was a crude thing, more a sinkhole than a prison, carved into the basalt near a collapsed relay arch. The signal that led them there was intermittent, like a dying heartbeat. Vrex tracked it to the edge and peered down. At the bottom, lying in a tangle of shredded comms wire and soaked field cloth, was Kellen Yu, once a field tech, now barely recognizable. His left arm was gone. His armor was melted into his skin. His eyes were unfocused, his lips cracked and gray. He looked up when Vargan dropped in beside him. You took your time, Yu whispered. Vargan hauled him up without a word. Els rappelled down with a medkit and immediately set about stabilizing what could be saved. Yu didn't flinch when she shoved a needle into his thigh or when she scraped infection off his ribs. He just watched the sky. They're building people now, he said. We know, Vargan replied. No, Yu said, eyes hardening. Not like that. They carried him back to the camp, what passed for one, a cave same as before with slightly less blood. Once stabilized, Yu talked. I was with the 9th Recon. We were tasked with planning collapse charges in Rathian tunnels near their spire field. We got in, didn't get out. I was captured, alone. He swallowed dryly. They didn't interrogate, didn't torture, just studied, scanned my memories, fed me, fixed my wounds. They weren't interested in information. So what did they want? Grieve asked. Yu's eyes didn't blink. Blueprints. He reached into the remains of his chest plate and pulled a thin obsidian shard. Memory mirror, Vrex muttered, taking it carefully. This is Rathian, and it's full. I watched them make something from it, something close to me. Yu's hands shook. They don't clone. They copy essence. What you fear, what you dream. Then they reshape it, break it, burn it back together. Els whispered, Ascension. Yu nodded. They said I'd be next, that my memories were rich. I escaped before they started the merge. Grieve lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. So we're not just dying, we're being recycled. No, Vargan said flatly. We're being overwritten. They didn't speak after that. Vrex scanned the shard, decrypted what he could. The images were disjointed, visions of Earth, twisted, cities remade in bone and spireglass. Human citizens standing in rows, silent, eyes glowing with that same sick green light. A projected date, 3 cycles from now. They're preparing, Vrex said. For invasion? Els asked. Vrex looked up. For inheritance. Coming up, the final approach on the refinery and the beginning of the last stand. Chapter 8, Hellglass. Continuing directly with the next part of the novel. The obsidian field was endless. Sheets of shattered black crystal stretched for miles between them and the refinery, each piece sharp enough to split a boot, each step loud enough to wake the dead. There was no cover, no wind, only the distant whine of alien turbines and the occasional flicker of light from the compound ahead. Vargan crouched at the edge of the ridge, studying the approach. "Straight shot," he said. "Straight suicide," Grieve replied. "We knew that coming in." They moved at twilight. The field hissed underfoot, slicing into their boots. Blood pooled in the cracks and vanished. Every 30 steps, someone cursed or fell. By the time they reached halfway, one rookie was dragging his own leg. Els patched him with a stem, but his eyes were already losing focus. Then the lightning started. Not natural, engineered. Arcs of green fire lanced down from the clouds like attracted to the minerals in the field. The first bolt struck 50 meters away and vaporized a rock formation. The second was closer. "They're charging the air," Vrex said, eyes scanning telemetry. "We're being flushed." "Not yet," Vargan growled. The refinery loomed, angular, monstrous, bleeding steam and dark light from a dozen vents. Alien figures moved on the walls. Not patrols. "Watchers, unarmed, observing. We plant the charge at the core node," Vargan said. You lead. You know their inner paths." You nodded. His body trembled, but his hands were steady. He carried the detonator like a holy relic. They reached the outer wall and breached through a coolant shaft. Inside, the walls pulsed with heat. Machines that didn't look like machines spun in patterns too organic to be mechanical. You led them through the lower levels, past vats of fluid where proto-shapes floated, not yet awake, past chambers where sound was piped into the walls, human voices distorted into lullabies. Finally, they reached the core, a heart of fused crystal and bone, beating in slow pulses, each one echoing through their skulls. You set the charge at the base. Then he turned to Vargan. "Tell them," he said. "Tell command. They're not invading, they're seeding." He didn't wait for a reply. He stepped into the chamber and locked the door. Vargan hit the override twice, hard, but you had rerouted the system. Through the glass, he saw you lift the detonator. He smiled. Then the core turned to fire. The refinery shook. Grieve screamed into comms. Els dragged Vrex through the collapsing hallways. The roof cracked open, venting green plasma into the sky. The watchers on the wall began to convulse, no longer observers, now just extensions of the thing that was dying. The team barely made it out. The blast wave sent them flying into the obsidian field. Vargan landed hard. Something cracked in his ribs. When he opened his eyes, the refinery was a burning crater, and the sky above was still watching. The refinery wasn't completely dead. Even as its superstructure crumbled and its organic components spasmed in terminal failure, parts of it still functioned. Backup nodes, secondary data spires, redundant control lines. The core was gone, but the mind of the refinery lived on in fragments, and it was angry. Lightning raked the sky in controlled patterns now, forming a perimeter of static that isolated the impact site. The 27th huddled in the crater's western rim, breathing shallow, counting weapons. Grieve was burned across his chest plate. Els had 2 shattered ribs. Vrex bled from the ear but still held his slate. They had 8 charges left. No more field kits. No more rookies. Just them. "We have 1 target left," Vargan said. "Data cluster. That spire there." He pointed to a jagged column still humming with power, embedded near the center of the wreckage. Sparks crawled along its length like static ants. "That's the relay hub," Vrex confirmed. "Transmits to orbit. Take that out, they lose all signal routing across the hemisphere. And they can't call reinforcements. They also can't report what we did here." Vargan looked at them all, his voice calm. "This is where we ended." Grieve gave a crooked smile. "Been waiting for a good spot." They moved out under fire. Automated defenses still clung to routines, sentry shards, laser nets, kinetic sweepers. Els led point, marking traps with colored smoke. Vrex coordinated field routes with his last active drone. Grieve covered the rear, limping but grinning like a lunatic, shotgun always hot. Vargan walked like a man carrying time itself. They reached the spire base just before full collapse. The ground cracked with every step. The wind screamed with data noise. The sky turned to static red. Grieve knelt to plant the charge, hands trembling. "Can't hold the timer steady," he said. "Need a manual det." Vargan stepped forward. "I'll take it." "No," Grieve said. No offense, big man, but you ain't got the touch, he smiled. Besides, I want this one. Vargan stared at him a moment, then nodded once. Grieve looked up at the tower. I never got to make anything, he said. Not really, always been a breaker, felt good. He pressed the charge into the spire's root. Feels even better to break the right thing. The countdown started. Get moving, he said, not looking back. Els turned first. Vrex followed. Vargan paused. Anything you want me to tell Command? Grieve lit his last cigarette. Yeah, tell him Orbital Slag still burns just fine. The spire erupted a minute later. The crater collapsed, and Grieve was gone. Next, Chapter 10, Static Red, the last transmission, and the final enemy descent. Continuing now with Chapter Static Red, the final transmission begins. The sky above the crater had turned to smoke. Thick, red-tinted static rolled across the upper atmosphere like a disease. Interference born from the refinery's collapse, laced with data screams and flickering heat. Els could hear it in her helmet. Not noise, not random. It was language, breaking itself apart. They didn't run. There was nowhere to run. Vargan and Els dragged Vrex to the ridge. His legs weren't responding. His slate was shattered. But he was still alive, barely, eyes locked to the comms uplink embedded in his palm. The window's open, he said. We can transmit? To who? Els asked. There's nothing left. There's always someone left, Vrex replied, spitting blood. They reached the uplink point, a half-standing relay dish rigged to a scavenged pod battery. Els adjusted the signal cone manually while Vargan stood guard, staring into the ash storm where flickers of motion crawled. Not soldiers, not drones, not shapes with names. The last phase had begun. Vrex activated the uplink. A green bar crawled upward, too slow. The signal screamed static, but the message embedded beneath it was hard-coded and encrypted. Everything they'd seen, everything they'd done. The atrocities, the mimicry, the flesh sculpting, the truth. It's working. Vrex whispered. Then something hit him. He jerked forward, eyes wide. A shard of obsidian, thrown with such precision it passed through his neck without resistance. His body dropped with a wet gasp. Contact! Els screamed, spinning, dropping into cover behind the dish. Vargan fired blind into the smoke. Shapes emerged, silent, sleek, gliding over the rubble. Their forms shifted as they moved. Humanoid, then bestial, then something else. They didn't speak. They didn't fire. They simply advanced. Vargan roared and charged the nearest one, blade out. He slammed into it, knocking it flat, then drove his knife into its chest. It didn't bleed. It dissolved, pulling itself apart into threads that wrapped around his arm. Els covered him, shot after shot, whispering to herself, not prayers, names. Behind them, the relay flickered green. Transmission complete. The message was away. But the fight wasn't over. A new shape landed near them. Heavier, armored, its face a perfect human replica of you, smiling wide. It raised a limb that wasn't a limb. Els screamed, aimed. Then Vargan tackled it. They fell together off the ridge into the burning ash. The creature writhed and screamed. Vargan tore at it with knife and bare hands, screaming louder. The ground gave way beneath them, swallowing the brawl in a cloud of molten black dust. Then silence. Only Els remained. She staggered to the uplink. Her rifle was gone. Her helmet cracked. But the dish was still warm. She took the drive from Vrex's corpse, plugged it into the port again, recorded one last line. This is Ghost, 27th drop, Valkus surface. We sent the truth. If you're hearing this, it's already too late. She pulled the backup mag from her belt, slammed it into a scavenged sidearm, then turned to face the storm. There was no sound in the crater now, only the deep subsonic hum of regrowth. Els Ghost stood on the rim with her boots sinking into ash turned to mud. Beneath her, the obsidian field pulsed faintly, threads of green and red light moving beneath its surface like nerves. The refinery's corpse had begun to repair itself. Not rebuild. Evolve. She watched with the blank calm of someone beyond grief. The weapon in her hand hummed with residual charge, half empty. Her HUD blinked with phantom alerts. No ammo, no allies, no signal. And yet the air was full. Shapes moved in the distance, circling closer. She dropped the helmet, breathed Valkus raw and unfiltered. It burned, but she welcomed the pain. It reminded her she wasn't one of them. Not yet. The ground behind her shifted, soft then solid, then soft again. The hive's children were coming, drawn by blood and signal. She didn't turn. Instead, she stepped forward onto a chunk of shattered spine steel, raised her weapon, and broadcast her presence. Not coded, not encrypted. Just raw. I'm still here. Silence. Then motion. They came in waves. First the smaller ones, drone shells barely formed, twitching like insects learning how to walk. Then the more complete horrors, mirror men with too many joints, too perfect smiles, and mismatched limbs. One of them wore Greaves' face. Ghost shot it first. The crater became a kill zone. She moved through them like memory through trauma, sharp, unstoppable, half dream. Every shot cost her more. She used the recoil to aim, the pain to focus. She didn't count bodies, only bullets. When the sidearm clicked empty, she pulled the utility blade. When that snapped, she used rebar. When that bent, she fought with fists and teeth and hate. They were many, but they weren't her. She screamed until her throat tore. By the time the sun broke through the storm, weak and red but still sun, she was the only thing standing, bloodied, barely breathing, eyes burning. She crawled to the relay, now flickering intermittently, and keyed in one final broadcast. Here stands the last of the 27th. She looked into the lens. Her voice was low. We weren't meant to win. We were meant to hurt them, so if you're listening, go further, burn deeper. Make them remember us. She closed her eyes and waited. Final chapter, epilogue, Ashen Echo. Final chapter, epilogue, Ashen Echo. The transmission drifted through dead space for 47 cycles. It passed wreckage fields. It passed husked outposts. It passed ships filled with ghosts in cryo. For 47 cycles, no one heard it. And then someone did. A salvage team in a repurposed mining barge, scavenging the edge of the Valkus belt, caught the signal by accident. It came encoded in ancient comms layering, primitive, obsolete, forgotten. The barge's system flagged it as corrupted. The tech on board almost deleted it. But curiosity is a terrible thing. So he played it. Ghost's voice filled the comm deck. A minute later, the captain heard it. An hour later, it was copied. By the next day, it was everywhere. The 27th's final broadcast swept through the fringe colonies like wildfire. Not propaganda, not polished, just truth. The images, the screams, the mimicry, the refinery, the horror, the heroism. The final line, make them remember us. They did. Within a cycle, recruitment surged. Within 3, unofficial kill teams began deploying without sanction. Veterans, rogues, outlaws, settlers with nothing to lose. They didn't wait for command. They didn't use orbital guns. They landed, on foot, with grit and blades and fury. They called themselves Slagborn, because orbital fire was clean, but they were not. They burned through Rathian lines not as soldiers, but as plagues. Every time they died, they scrawled the same mark in the dirt on walls in blood. No name, no banner, just a number. And on Valkus, under black sky and blood wind, the ashes stirred. The crater pulsed. Something ancient and angry still lived beneath it. Watching, waiting, whispering, and far above, drifting between the stars, a broken pod floated, empty except for one word burned into its hull. Grieve, end.